Hello, my name is Brian Lambert, and I am chair of the DuPage Libertarians. And we meet once a month. Sorry, I'm eating a mint. This is bad timing. We meet once a month at a place called the American Tap in Addison. And the owners of the American Tap also are the owners of EarthMed, the largest medical marijuana dispensary in Illinois. And they're a big supporter of Claire. They made a big donation for her and Kent McMillan in their campaign. They supplied hundreds of dollars worth of food for a fundraiser that we did several months ago, during the campaign. Anyway, they've been really good to us, really supportive of us, and because they're a medical marijuana dispensary in the state, they are part of the Medical Cannabis Alliance of Illinois. And they fight to help the medical marijuana business grow in the state. They've had several fights, including Crohn's disease. I think PTSD was one of the fights that had to happen to help more people get the medical aid that they need. Here to my right is Ross Morrealle from the Medical Cannabis Alliance of Illinois. He will answer all your questions, and he's going to talk and answer anything you guys might have about what the struggle is in Illinois for this business. And take it away.
Whoa.
Here you go, sir. Give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, Brian, for the introduction, and I want to thank the Libertarian Party of DuPage County for inviting me to speak on behalf of Medical Cannabis and inform you guys a little bit about the program. A little background about me: I'm an attorney. I'm from Chicago. I am co-founder and chief compliance officer of Ataraxia, which is a cultivation center. We were the first to market in November of 2015 with edibles and flower and vape cartridges and all kinds of different products. I'm also co-founder and chairman of the Medical Cannabis Alliance of Illinois, which is the industry association that represents our interests in Springfield and in a lot of other places. A little bit about the industry generally. In 2014, House Bill 1 was passed and signed into law, and that was the enabling act that allowed the medical cannabis program to take off in 2015. Applications were all submitted in 2015, and winners were announced in the beginning of 2016. We were one of those winners, luckily, and then Ataraxia was formed and we moved forward from there. Since House Bill 1, our industry led the effort to design Senate Bill 10, which was passed last session, and Governor Ronner signed it. That bill extended the program from 2018 to 2020. So now the pilot program runs through the summer of 2020. It also added PTSD, as Brian had mentioned, and terminal illnesses. There was an issue with some patients that were very, very, very sick, that didn't have much longer to live. The process took too long for them to be able to gain access to the regulated medical cannabis supply. So the industry felt a lot of pressure to help these people, and that was one of the asks that we had of the governor, was to somehow come up with an expedited process. And now these people, because of Senate Bill 10, can get their card within 10 days to 2 weeks, which is about a third of the time of the regular process. So there were some big improvements with Senate Bill 10, which was passed last session in May of 2016. This session, there's lots of other bills that other people have introduced. There's a decriminalization bill, even though Illinois is already decriminalized. That happened last year as well. There's a recreational use bill, which I'm sure all of you have heard about. There's some other bills. One bill requires more training, more regulations for the industry, which we're the most regulated industry in the country. And then some people want to grow industrial hemp in farm fields to use for paints and industrial type products, clothing and baskets and other things that you can use hemp for, and not the cannabis plants that we sell. So our kind of position on all of these bills and kind of the status of the industry where it's at is our focus is on patients. A lot of our customers, ultimately, they're all patients. Some of them are very, very, very sick. Cancer is an approved condition. Fibromyalgia is an approved condition. Crohn's, MS, lupus. There's about 39 conditions. Rheumatoid arthritis. The rest are escaping me, but they're all available online. There's many more, about 39 conditions. One condition that's really lacking is some type of pain condition. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the opiate crisis in our country. There's over 100 million chronic pain sufferers, and currently those patients don't have access to medical cannabis in Illinois. They do in most states, but not here. In House Bill 1, there was a Medical Cannabis Advisory Board that was created. I don't know if any of you have heard of it or not. There were 12 to 13 individuals appointed to that board from Governor Quinn and Governor Rauner, many doctors, some patients, healthcare professionals generally. And the role of this board was to allow a mechanism for the citizens of the state to petition the Department of Public Health to add conditions, separate and apart from the conditions that were in the original bill, House Bill 1. So many petitioners have done this, many citizens of our state have petitioned public health for 2 years now, with conditions like intractable pain, migraines, post-operative chronic pain, osteoarthritis, irritable bowel syndrome, a lot of mainstream conditions that affect hundreds of thousands of people in our state, if not millions. And when these petitions were submitted to the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board, which is part of Department of Public Health, the doctors and professionals on that board voted to recommend approval of almost all of these conditions, including various pain conditions, osteoarthritis, migraines, irritable bowel syndrome. After hearings, public hearings, and after a lot of debate and a lot of thought, these medical professionals made these recommendations. And the unfortunate part is Dr. Shaw, who's the Director of Public Health, has denied every one of them. There's been, I think, 20-something denials. And this is, coming from, we believe, the governor's office as well, the direction's coming from. So since then, there's been lots of lawsuits. A lot of these petitioners have filed lawsuits in circuit court, appealing the administrative decision made by Dr. Shaw to deny these conditions that many other states have. And some of you may have heard some of these opinions, but many of the circuit court judges lambasted Dr. Shaw publicly, violating petitioners' due process rights and not following the process by which he was supposed to decide. So I think one of the major issues that's facing not only the industry, but patients of our state is access. Access to a safe, regulated supply of medical cannabis. I'm sure everyone in this room is a supporter of decriminalization, because I believe most of you are for less regulations generally. The issue with decriminalizing cannabis beyond what it currently is, which is 10 grams, which happened last year, is that the patients that have pain, is a large subset of those that don't have access today. Without getting them access to the program, you can decriminalize it and make it okay for them to possess it, but they're still forced to buy an inferior product. They don't know what it is. It's not regulated. It's not lab tested, and they're buying it from a drug dealer on the streets. So the fight for the industry here really is to make some headway with the Dr. Shaw, Director of Public Health, and the governor's office in opening up the medical program to other patients, sick patients that currently don't have access to it based on the very limited and restrictive conditions that are set in our state. Second. Are there any questions as of now? I'll take a few.
I just had a question here. Do you guys have any strains or are working on any strains of marijuana that act as anti-inflammatory or pain reliever without the psychotropic effect?
Yes, so there's many cannabinoids in cannabis plants. THC is one that everybody's familiar with probably. That's the one that gives you the psychedelic feeling, the body buzz, depending on what it is. And there's another cannabinoid called CBD. And CBD does not have the psychoactive effect. And its primary properties are it's relaxing, it helps with anxiety a little bit, but it's very good for decreasing inflammation. So we have a product called ACDC, which is a strain that's, some of the names are a little crazy, I'll give you that. But it's 24 parts CBD to 1 part THC. It's probably one of the highest ratios of CBD to THC that there is. And this is what a lot of children use for seizures. It's also helps with that. Tremors, seizures, and those types of things without getting a high feeling.
You mentioned your trouble with access as far as the laws in the state. What are you guys doing about educating doctors and things like that that are refusing to prescribe or consider these alternatives?
Well, in Senate Bill 10, one of the other parts of it was a change to the doctor certification form. We worked with the Illinois State Medical Society on that. Prior to Senate Bill 10, doctors had to actually make a recommendation. They had to say that they would think that the benefits of using medical cannabis would outweigh the risks, and that caused a lot of angst. The law was intended just to have them certify that a patient had a condition. So if you have cancer in your medical records, all the doctor should really have to do is fill out a form that says, yes, I treat this patient under my care, this patient has an eligible condition, that condition is cancer. That's what it is now. So Senate Bill 10 removed the recommendation, it removed doctors getting into the opining as to whether this is going to be helpful or not, because there's a lot of gray area. And it lacks, at least in the medical community, as far as they want science, because they're used to FDA studies that give them these certain results. Did I answer your question?
Sort of.
Where did I miss?
I've got a specific instance in mind where I've got a good friend down in the Champaign area that's got fibro and can't get the doctors to sign off on her getting a marijuana card or whatever it is so that she can get access to it because all the doctors at Carl where she goes, well, oh no, we don't believe it.
Yeah, it's there's many healthcare organizations that just aren't on board. A lot of them are in Southern Illinois or Central Illinois. Up here in the northern part of the state, it's better. There's third-party organizations that have popped up too that have doctors that your friend could potentially go to and bring their medical records, assuming that the medical records have the diagnosis in it already. And then you can go to another doctor and say, hey doctor, here's my medical records. Could you please certify that I have this condition after reviewing my records? And if you get in touch with Brian, I can refer you to some places that do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You said a lot about the director of public health or whoever his title was, Dr. Shaw. Would you have any news articles or that you could recommend that has his opinions out there?
That has Dr. Shaw's opinions?
Yeah.
He actually spoke last week in a hearing in Springfield, and I wasn't there, but he definitely talked about opiates and acknowledged the problem. Because we can't get him to look at cannabis as a solution. And not that it is the solution, but it's a tool that doctors should be able to pull out of the toolbox and say, hey, for this patient, you should try this because you're taking way too many opiates and you're not getting maybe the desired result, and it's causing all these other issues like opiate-induced constipation. I'm sure you've all seen the commercials for that. So you take opiates to deal with pain, and then now you have to take a opiate-induced constipation pill to deal with the side effect of constipation from the opiates. Or you can try cannabis, medical cannabis, and see if that works for you without the side effects that would require other narcotic drugs.
As libertarians, we love our guns. I know the law has changed where you now can have your Floyd and gun ownership, but is it true that once you get your card, you can no longer own a gun until you've been off of it for a year? Is that true?
So this is a very murky area, I think. There's federal law and state law that comes into play. There's a federal statute, and the citation escapes me right now, but it essentially says that nobody can possess or own a firearm if you're addicted, if 8 or 10 things exist. One of those things is if you're addicted to a controlled substance. So, it's been interpreted, so let me go back. So just this year, the ATF created a new firearm ownership purchase form, I believe it's called. that specifically mentions cannabis use patients for the first time. Prior to, it never said it. So now, yes, there's cannabis patient reference in a form that you would apply to buy a gun, and if you check yes, you're not gonna be able to buy the gun if you're a cannabis patient.
No, you're lying.
So you can still possess a gun, but I believe how it's playing out in Illinois is you have a carry conceal permit issue. The FOID card's okay, but you're gonna have issues making purchases, new purchases, but you can keep the guns that you currently have. This is something that, you know, I have my carry conceal and my FOID card, so I mean, and a lot of the guys that, you know, are owners in the industry or, you know, have, you know, very involved in the industry, this is an important issue to all of us. Not that we're patients, because I'm not, but I understand that it's a big thing to have to worry, especially for veterans with PTSD. Are you gonna give up a gun that you've had forever, or not be able to purchase new guns so you can buy cannabis legally? Or you just keep buying it where you're buying it from, and then you don't have to worry about it. So it's a problem, and I don't know when it's gonna play out, because it really stems from federal law, and hopefully soon it'll be addressed.
There's a case, Wilson versus somebody, coming out of Nevada. Wilson is S. Rowan Wilson, who's a libertarian. She's in San Francisco, is now in the Las Vegas area. And she's the plaintiff, she's a medical marijuana patient who tried to buy a firearm. And this is coming, I believe the Supreme Court has accepted cert. And so it should be settled within the next couple of years, hopefully the right way. But look for Wilson versus whatever.
Yeah, it's good to know, thanks for pointing that out.
Nevada, you said?
Yeah, but it's in the
Yeah.
federal system.
In the back?
How is access, or let's say lack of access, affecting the growth of the industry? And just, do you see it as a very sustainable industry in Illinois? Because that's one of the things I'm concerned about. There's not enough customers to keep you guys able to supply your lab technicians, your overhead, et cetera.
So yes, the program has woefully less patients than anybody ever anticipated. The doctor issue in the beginning with lack of willingness to certify was part of the problem. The biggest problem is just a lack of conditions that a lot of people have. The conditions people have are relatively, you know, a lot of people have cancer, but how many people have conditions like, one of the conditions is one of the rarer ones. That one's pretty popular actually with people, because I think fibromyalgia is a condition that it's really an elimination of understanding what is really going on, and if there's no other logical source for the symptom, then they say you have fibromyalgia. But it's, it'll come back to me, but there's several conditions that very few people have. I mean, you're talking maybe tens of thousands of people have them in the state, and out of that, how many are actually gonna apply for a card versus, you know, some type of pain condition. There's probably a few million people in our state that suffer from chronic pain. But I think I deviated from your question.
I'm just saying, do you think that there's enough customer support out there, or base, at the current rate that we can sustain the industry? Does this make you have enough people buy?
I think it's definitely sustainable, but yeah, we need more patients. I mean, it's for example, last month, I can read some stats for you last month. The retail sales in March were $6.4 million, it's dispensary sales to patients. And wholesale sales this year have been almost 10 million bucks. So, I mean, that's 700,000 in tax on that 10 million bucks. All the cultivation centers have to pay 7%. So you can take, there are 18,000 registered patients in that period too. So you can look at, by adding conditions and expanding the program, that you can go from 18,000 patients to, you know, 180,000 patients, 280,000 patients. And we could have a state with 500,000 patients. It's a big state. So in that sense, when you say, okay, there's a potential to have 500,000 patients with the right conditions, and we have 18,000, yeah, there's enormous growth. And the tax revenue that can be generated is considerable. The jobs that can be created. I mean, we have 50 employees at our cultivation center now, and we have a 50,000 square foot building that we built. So we would expand. We'd hire more people, our contractors would get more work, we'd have to build more flower rooms, we have to build another building. We have 18 acres with one 50,000 square foot building, but we could build 7 of those buildings. if the program warranted it. So, yeah, it's definitely sustainable. It's slower than everybody would have thought. There are a few things that could happen, like conditions that would really accelerate things. And at the end of the day, it would help the patients of the state that are suffering, and it would help everybody in the state with some extra tax revenue. And, you know, eliminating all these illegal transactions that happen on the streets too. That's a lot of, it's not so much cannabis, but some of the other drugs wouldn't help, but cannabis too. I mean, all these are illegal transactions with people that aren't paying taxes and, you know, not employing people, and all this money is going some other place versus, you know, to the coffers of the state, which, you know, they definitely need more money in our state.
You don't know of any dispensaries that are struggling, or any grow places that are struggling, you guys are doing okay.
Certainly, some of the licensees are struggling, there's no question. There needs to be more patience. Those that came to market earlier and opened earlier, they're probably doing better. Those that have come later are probably doing worse, because it's harder to, you know, compete when you come late to the game versus early in the game. So yeah, there's not, the industry as a whole is, I think, will do fine and is sustainable. But like any other business, you know, not everybody succeeds, and there's some failures in dry cleaners and currency exchanges and fast food restaurants and any other type of business.
So it seems to me that medical marijuana is just like a stepping stone to full legalization. And my question is your group only advocate for regulation as far as, I want this to be an industry so we can make profit off of it, or are you pushing for full legalization of marijuana in general?
Well, at this point, we're focused on medical cannabis. We're focused on patients, we're focused on, you know, making products that help patients. We're not focused on recreational use at this point. There's other groups that are, and we're kind of sitting back and waiting to see what happens with that. We're not against it, but we're not actively pursuing it because we're focused on, you know, making sure that the patients that need access to what we're currently doing have access to it.
I have a follow-up to that. If it does become legalized, do you think there's still a medical marijuana market, or do you just become a marijuana dispensary?
I think if you look at most states, maybe all states, both have existed. Most states have started medical and then have added adult recreational use at some point. But for Colorado, for example, it's really a taxation thing. The medical patients pay a very small tax. The recreational use customers pay a much higher tax. So there's actually, I think in Colorado, they actually have 2 different permits, and it really comes down to they're taxed differently. Yes?
Are your employees urine screened?
We don't know.
Fantastic, got an application?
They do get first time mail.
Back to the back.
Are you guys having issues with banking like that?
There are banking issues. There are banks in Illinois. We have full banking, us personally. There are a few dispensaries that pay us in cash, but most of the licensees have banking. There's a few banks. One's dropping out. So I think the compliance burden on them is probably a little more than they wanted to get into. But the FDIC is okay with banks taking money from licensed cannabis entities, but there's a whole bunch of stuff they have to do. I mean, it's very intrusive into the businesses. The banks are very intrusive with, you know, knowing, they get copies of all of our invoices, all of our checks. I mean, they're really tracking what's going on with the dollars, which is good. Yeah. We look at it here in Illinois, everyone complains, not in Illinois, but others complain around that, oh, the regulations are so hard, how do you guys deal with that? And when you initially think of it, yeah, that's true, but the flip side is it gives our industry here a lot more credibility, and it makes it a lot more sustainable and makes it a lot safer to operate because there haven't been any bad stories. I mean, everyone here watches the news. There haven't been any missteps with the program so far. Like in other states, you look at Colorado, 3 people were sentenced to federal prison, I think last week, because they had a license, but they were shipping it over state lines illegally. You know, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and one other state actually sued the state of Colorado because of all the drugs, cannabis that was coming over the state lines into their states. Yes?
We know that from Colorado and Washington, there's an economic benefit to taxpayers based on the taxation of medical or recreational marijuana. As far as the medical industry here, the medical marijuana industry here, is there a presentment or an argument based on any data exists on money saved for taxpayers based on the reduction of pharmaceutical costs and R&D or opiates and other prescription drugs? So do we have data looking at those states to say, okay, we're saving X amount of dollars now because now we have medical marijuana, which is reducing the taxpayer's burden to pay for prescription drugs?
Yes, I don't know the stats offhand, but yeah, I know that they're out there, and lost my train of thought. But yes,
Okay.
I'll follow up. I had something else to say in regard to that, but it'll come back to me.
One last serious question though, is the medical marijuana HSA compliant for purchases on that? Health savings account purchases or?
You know, there is some cases floating around about whether health insurance companies have to pay for it. That would be different probably through an HSA, because HSAs are much more
Right. It's just health
liberal,
savings.
right? And there's more things that you can use those. I have an HSA, so there's more things you can use it for dental care, whereas with
Right.
health insurance you have to have dental
I
coverage.
didn't know if they'd allow that for the medical marijuana.
I don't know.
purchases or not.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question.
Kind of off of his question in regards to taxes, so I guess subscription should get is a medical unit. Are you able to deduct that on a schedule A in your taxes, or is that all federal issue? How does that work?
Well, federal taxes are something called 280E, which I don't know if any of you heard of or not, but it's a code in the federal tax, provision in the federal tax code that was passed in the late 70s because a drug dealer tried to deduct a bunch of expenses in his drug business. And that didn't, he got called out in his taxes and came out, and they passed this law that basically said, 280E is the section, that you can't deduct ordinary business expenses if you're engaged in selling a controlled substance, a legally controlled substance. So that predates any legalized form of cannabis in our country. So then you have, California, Colorado, some of the other states come first, and now you have 30-something states that have legal entities licensed that can't deduct their ordinary business expenses. So that's something that we're trying to get taken care of within tax reform in the current administration, since that seems to be next on the plate in Washington. So that's one of, I think, the industry's one of the top national items on our agenda is to basically accept us from that and say, unless you're licensed by a state, then it doesn't apply to you. It hurts dispensaries a lot. They can't even deduct a lot of their employees' payroll. They can only deduct, they can only deduct when they're not selling cannabis. They're talking to patients about educating patients, you can deduct that part of the employee's salary or pay, but not the other part. So it becomes very complicated accounting-wise, and everyone's overtaxed, and a lot.
I know some almost miraculous pain-relieving conditions come about with cannabis. Is there a separate category for that? Is it like, because that's mostly CBD, as I understand it. Is that broken out here?
When you say cannabis oil, do you mean like oil like in a syringe or something?
No, the drops is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that. We have RSO syringes. They come 1,000 milligrams, I'm sorry. And you can put it on your tongue. You can mix it in foods. You can take it sublingually. We also have vaporizer pens that are cartridges. They're like e-cigarettes. That's another way to get medicine in an oil form. Yeah.
There's no differentiation, even though it's not a hallucinogenic.
Well, you can have CBD products in any delivery mechanism. So it's not like oil doesn't get you high. It could. It depends on what it is. And we can actually separate the different cannabinoids and change the potencies of each within a particular oil. It's called fractional distillation.
Following up on that, what does it cost a person in general dollars to the state to get the license to acquire
So to become a patient,
Right. What's the monetary cost?
it largely depends if your doctor will certify you or not. If your doctor will certify you, the state fees are, depending on whether you get a 1, 2, or 3-year card, the fees between $100 and $250, I think. And then you have to get fingerprinted, which costs you $60. Which is another thing we're trying to get rid of, is every patient has to be fingerprinted, which is very intrusive and a drag on the program. Did I answer your question? In the back? Yeah, good.
Kind of seems like, assuming that marijuana legalization takes the same, like, steps of like, legalization, that it's only a matter of time before recreational marijuana is legalized. And I know there's a lot of advertising about regulating of alcohol, but alcohol regulation is the best, that doesn't make sense. Is there any, do you foresee any mechanism to make it less
I don't know. Like I said, we're focused on the medical side of the industry right now, and we don't give a lot of thought to the recreational side. Other people are focused on that. Sorry, I couldn't give you a better answer.
When you think about like pain management, for example, where does the opposition to that come from? Is it more the pharmaceutical industry? Is it just people who are scared? Why is it that you can't force through chronic pain?
I mean, that's a good question. I think the governor has the answer. I mean, he's the reason why we don't have it, I mean, quite honestly. I think there's some ideologicalness going on there, and I think some people are worried that chronic pain is like a floodgate condition, and they value that more, they value the risk of that more than helping the majority of those chronic pain sufferers that are legitimate and are actually going to use it for the right reasons. So it's just, I think, a backwards way of looking at it, but I don't have an answer. It's just speculation. But we're trying. I mean, it's like our #1 priority to get the pain sufferers just to have an option for them, because I meet a lot of these people when I'm out at events, and some of them get very emotional. I mean, they don't want to be taking these opiates. I mean, some don't mind, but a lot of them, they just don't want to do it anymore, but they don't really have a choice. So it's sad.
I know when medical marijuana was first being debated and whether it was allowed in the state, one of the big detractor conversations that they would bring forward was the security issues that you were going to have at dispensaries and the amount of money you had to spend, and people were going to break in or try to rob you. Since you've been in operation, have you had any issues at all as far as security of your facility?
No, there really haven't been anywhere. There was one instance where it was a dispensary in the Chicago area that some kids, they had storefront windows, and some kids threw some bricks through the window and broke the windows. There was no attempt to break in beyond that, and that got some press, but that was like the only thing that was even close to anything negative, and it was literally just kids doing simple vandalism, and it could have been a dry cleaner for all practical purposes, because there was no attempt to actually break into the dispensary itself. But that's the only one I've ever heard of.
As libertarians, it's an industry that clearly marijuana would have to regulate, but as libertarians, we're all for the free market. So I know you advocate for medical cannabis, but are you guys also advocating for lowering the necessary asset requirements, the application fees, the renewal fees, so others can, start dispensaries, cultivation centers, and such?
So, to issue any new permits, there has to be a new application period. And the governor has to decide if he wants to do that. The law, the House Bill 1 only authorized so many. So the only path to new licenses is to pass a new law. So It's not something we're focused on, because we're focused on, you know, making the current program better with helping patients get access, removing fingerprints, adding more conditions and things like that. But I mean, I'm sure others that want to get in the industry, you know, will focus on that, and if, you know, they do, I'm sure we'll hear about it.
I was wondering how you guys deal with workplace regulations, like is there any, if your company doesn't let you do drugs, I'm sure there's some issues here, right?
Our company specifically?
No, I mean, just, like, if I were to go get a medical card, my company doesn't allow me to use the drug. There's no, like, regulations for that, right?
It's rough. It's tough to be an employee in that spot. The employers clearly have the upper hand, and yeah, I mean, that's one of these other things, like health insurance, you know, there's a few issues that are still make it hard for patients. You have gun issues, you have health insurance issues, not paying for it, and you have the issue you just mentioned as well, that makes it a little hard. It takes time to get all these things changed.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, it's tough. Anyone else have anything? Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for the time. I appreciate it.